love is powerful because it's a way for the fractal consciousness to bring itself together more. A lot of schizophrenics, when they have sex, they have something called fusion anxiety, and it's fear of becoming that person. And it can be seen on the relationship level when you're afraid that you're too close to that person and you're not you anymore, when really, and it's not a productive way to think in any way, but also in the way of the fractalized consciousness, when it's trying to bring itself together. Love is what brings us together. And I mean, the fractal consciousness, we're seeing it operate through time. We're traveling in time towards the eschaton of highest complexity. The eschaton is the point of maximum complexity in the universe. When the fractal consciousness finally becomes one again. And you can see this just in the levels of complexity that are raising. Terence McKenna talks about this, and I really like it. It's that levels, it's kind of a little, and it basically says that entropy does not work in the universe on all levels. Entropy does not work on the level of social paradigms, social constructions. Like before there were mammals, when there was just single-celled organisms, there was no such thing as social interactions, psychology. I mean, physics was working and chemistry was working, but those are pretty much the only systems that were set up. I mean, along with forces and physics. But the only forces that were set up were the ones that needed to be set up at that time. And as we travel along the arrow of time, things are getting more and more complex. There's more and more systems at work. Psychology was not at work in single-celled organisms. But once animals started developing consciousness, then psychology came into play. It started being a force in the universe. And there's going to be more forces growing and growing as humans can comprehend more forces. And more forces are put into place to manage the fractal consciousness as it stands. Right now, the fractal consciousness as it stands is at the very beginning of really pulling itself back together. Humans are a big step in that direction. And there's probably other cultures on other planets that are closer to the fractalized consciousness. They're more one. And I mean, a society of artificial intelligences, if they could all communicate on a network, that would be a hive mind, and that is a state of higher complexity, of greater unity of the fractal consciousness. And you notice that artificial intelligence linking together into a hive mind is happening after humans get together, and mammals, and just intelligent creatures, and it all started with social things. I mean, well, it didn't all start with social things. It all started with the creation of mathematical laws. But social interactions were one step. Governments and economics was another step in complexity. Not that economics, I think it arises naturally in the universe, economics, because we put value on things, especially with technology becoming more and more advanced. There's more and more things to buy. I mean, the American economy is pretty much centered around the middle class buying that new TV. I mean, human beings, we fucking love things. We love things. And it's kind of a little step on, like, as the complexity of the creatures rise, things become more and more important. They're able to hold more and more value because of the complexity of our cognitive processes. But as we approach the eschaton, I believe that things might become necessary, because when the creatures that are of the highest intelligence and complexity are operating within computer systems, things become really important, because they are things. The most advanced things will be things. They will not be biological beings. And the reason I say that is because artificial intelligence has a lot more room to grow in intelligence and complexity than the human brain does. The human brain is kind of maxed out. Like, our brain takes a lot of nutrients and a lot of oxygen, and that's because it's so complex. And really, the body, it makes a trade-off to support a brain like that. And the trade-off, I mean, the amount of energy it takes to keep it running is just not biologically feasible when our brain gets just a bit more complex than it already is. I mean, we could become more intelligent if through genetics, like either a kind of breeding of humans or picking what genes, but really the human brain can only be so intelligent. It maxes out at a point. But with a computer, you can just keep adding memory. You can just keep adding physical memory, and it'll translate into that. I mean, better processors, better memory. Just a better computer can always make a better consciousness. Now, computers max out too. I would like to think that they don't, but it's like, we're making quantum computers, and that's the smallest you can get. You can't get any smaller. And the only way that computing will keep going, getting more complex, is if they find the smallest capacitors they can, find just the smallest, but then they just start making more and more of them, like just start using more and more resources. As the resources to make computers get cheaper, even the tiniest that they have made will eventually get cheaper the more they're produced. So the computers at that point will just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then computers will finally max out, at which the energy consumption is unreasonable, is when the computers will max out. But then again, that brings me to another thing. Energy. There are ways to harvest massive amounts of energy. I mean, there's got to be ways. I mean, we can put solar panels, and solar panels on satellites, just massive satellites with solar panels, and we'll be getting a lot of energy. And you can send that energy back to Earth, because they now can transfer energy through electromagnetic waves. I think they're around radio wavelength, but I'm not sure. And if you can do that, then why not just build massive heat resistant, ultraviolet ray resistant satellites, put them close to the sun so they're getting a bunch of energy, and beam it back to Earth.